Dylan, what is the most difficult part of learning the guitar?
Honestly, I would say just kind of getting out of your own way and not beating yourself up too much in the beginning, and just in general the process of developing your ear. Yeah.
So, during your journey on guitar, how did you best break through any kind of plateaus or slumps that you hit?
Well, a lot of my learning has just been from honestly just transcribing my favorite player solos and things like that. So I'd say the ways that I typically break through a plateau is just like find something new, find something different to learn that's just completely like not what I've been doing. Just try and find something that's totally out of left field. Like if I've been working on blues stuff for a while, work on some jazz or some bluegrass or just whatever. Just work on different stuff.
So, transcribing is huge for you.
Yeah, and not necessarily writing it out, but mainly just learning it. Learning the stuff by ear.
Cool. Okay, side question. When you learn transcriptions, like when you're picking them out by ear, how closely do you try to match the recording? And are you more of like a nuggets kind of person, or will you go for full solos all the time? How do you kind of approach that?
So I try to get it pretty exact if I'm learning a solo, and in terms of how much, it kind of depends. I used to be very much like learn the whole solo, learn as much as I possibly can. These days, especially if I'm learning like transcribing a jazz tune or jazz solo, then I'll just a lot of times just get little snippets. But it just depends on the tune and how difficult it is. If there's parts that I just can't work out, then I'll just skip over them for now. But
Very cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you feel like there are any passive behaviors that contribute to guitar development, such as listening to different kinds of music or like learning another instrument?
Absolutely yes to both of those. I think just listening to, I don't want to sound like a snob, but just like, music that is just good, I guess. Listening to good, like real music, like stuff that's not too lightweight, fluff kind of stuff, I think is really important because, the more you listen to stuff that's legit, it'll just kind of make its way into your own playing. And yeah, I would say just listening and I mean learning other instruments for sure. I think learning piano is huge, just especially if you're learning theory. I think it makes it a lot easier to conceptualize the stuff and then you can apply it to guitar later. And just learning like bass and just kind of, even if you can't play drums, just kind of learning about what the rhythm section is doing, I think can help with your pocket and your feel and just your rhythm and just things like that. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Nice. Do you have a pre-practice or pre-performance ritual that really gets you in the zone for playing?
I do not. I mean, I'll just sort of noodle for a second, just play a few slide licks, and yeah, I don't really have a ritual or anything like that.
Cool. Did you ever have any kind of prolonged period where you didn't play the guitar at all?
Not really. I started when I was 9 years old, and aside from a couple like family vacations where I couldn't bring a guitar with me, I've pretty much like ever since then just consistently been playing. So
Awesome. During any point in your journey, did you develop a habit or less than ideal technique that you've tried to fix?
I can't think of a specific bad habit, but I guess the closest thing would be like I went through several phases of trying to figure out the best picking style for me, and I feel like maybe jumping around between those, like using a pick, and then I used finger picks for a while, and then just using bare fingers, kind of threw me off for a little bit. But once I landed on just using only fingers, then I was good to go.
What is your most tried and true practice routine?
I would say just again just transcribing solos, and then I'm a big fan of jamming along with backing tracks, and usually I make my own backing tracks and I'll make one for whatever song that I just learned a solo from, play the solo of that I just learned, and then kind of expand off of it and sort of trying to incorporate aspects of it into my own improvisation.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, side question. I was at a workshop with Isaiah Sharkey, and he talked about
Nice.
taking licks, and instead of playing licks, he would play licks as concepts. So, kind of what you just described was that you would take a solo, you would learn it, you would make a backing track, and you play over it, but then you would try and like execute some of those things. When you try and execute those things, you try and make them your own, and if so, how would you approach that?
I'd say I don't do this as much now, but like when I was first learning to improvise, I would literally just like start just kind of improvising my own thing and then try and fit like exactly the lick that, a line or a lick from the solo that I just learned, just kind of interweave it into my solo. But yeah, now I'd say I'll just kind of maybe use like the shape or like the melodic idea or the motif or like a rhythm, rhythmic aspect of it, and try and just kind of create my own thing, sort of that's similar to what I had just learned.
Very cool. What was the single most effective thing you've learned that really opened the door to playing guitar?
Playing guitar just in general, I'm not sure, but a big kind of epiphany moment for me with improvising and soloing in general was learning the modes and learning them in the sense of like, say you're playing in a song in G major, and you can basically move up your positions based on like, basically like going up 2 frets up to your A Dorian and going up 2 frets to your B Phrygian and so on, and kind of using that as a framework to basically be able to play in any position, depending on what key the song is in. That was a huge, like, mind blow moment for me. So,
Yeah, sorry, I'm throwing some bangers at you there. Some of them are
yes,
like, what?
I know, it's tricky, yeah. I mean, honestly, because, like, I've never really had a strict, like, practice routine. So, yeah, I kind of have to, like, yeah, with these questions, I'm like, oh shit, I have to think about it for a second, because I feel like my way of learning has been very just kind of loose and song, solo transcription based, I would say. Along with like, eventually I went to music school and learned like theory and scales and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you approach learning new techniques and incorporating them into your playing?
Define techniques, just like different
I
like
think,
scales or
yeah, it could be anything from scales, chords, arpeggios, to literal, like, you play a harmonic and jump up an octave or something like that.
I mean, a lot of times it'll just be, I won't be actively seeking out anything. I'll just come across something cool that someone plays, or I'll run across just in my Instagram feed a tutorial such as one of yours will pop up, and it'll just make me think about something in a different way, and I'll just kind of do it. I don't know. I don't have a specific approach. Yeah, just whatever I come across, I just kind of try and imitate, and then yeah, and just try and incorporate it into my playing.
Yeah, very cool. Would you say you do that mostly in the practice room, or do you try and bring it out on the gig?
I'd say both. I feel like, yeah, a lot of the best learning comes, or happens on stage. So if it's a low stakes situation, then yeah, I'll kind of, I'll maybe just I'll think of something that I listened to that day or something that I saw on the internet that day and just try and throw it in. But if it's something that's more intricate or more difficult, then I'll kind of work it out first in the practice room and then take it to the stage.
Cool. What's your advice for aspiring guitarists looking to find their own voice and signature sound on the instrument?
That's that's one that I think about a lot, and I've tried to come up with a way to put it into, or to say it succinctly. But I just, well, for one thing, I would say try to find music and find artists and instruments and stuff that are, or try to find artists who are not guitarists who really inspire you, because I feel like if you only listen to and try and transcribe guitarists, then it makes you just sound very guitaristic and like a guitar player. So I feel like, at least for me, a huge thing that's helped me find my sound is branching out from just guitarists, listening to horn players, listening to singers, listening to pianists, and just all types of instruments, and just just sort of taking knowledge from all of those and combining it into my own thing.
Sick. What is the number one piece of advice you'd give someone who is just beginning to learn the guitar?
Learn songs that you like and that you want to learn. Don't feel like you have to learn things just because people say like, oh, you need, this is something you need to learn. Just mainly, I mean, yeah, just learn in the very beginning, just learn songs that are going to get you excited about playing the guitar.
Excellent. What is the number one piece of advice you'd give an intermediate guitarist?
So hopefully this doesn't contradict your teachings, but I would say if you're not already learning things by ear, then start trying to do that as soon as possible. Start trying to develop your ear and start learning some theory, but don't worry too much about learning all of it all at once while you're also trying to learn to play things. For me, the most important thing is to get stuff under your fingers by way of transcribing solos and stuff, and then work out the theory later. That's how I learned.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, I didn't learn that way, but I kind of wish I did.
So do you kind of encourage like kind of learning both concurrently at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, especially
Really?
nowadays. I mean, I was like kind of like a music school nerd. I mean, I wasted like 5 years doing a classical guitar degree. So like,
Gotcha, gotcha.
I'm like the anti music school at this point.
Right.
so,
Yeah,
so yeah.
I mean, I guess that's, I'm probably just biased because that's the way that I learned, but like, yeah, man, I mean, I really, like I said, I started playing guitar when I was 9, and I didn't really worry about theory until I was, getting into my late teens. And, for me, the big thing that got me to that taught me how to solo was, like learning Allman Brothers, Dwayne Allman, Dickie Betts solos, and those have a lot of blues in them, a lot of like Mixolydian and Dorian and stuff like that, and some other like somewhat like little tinges of jazz chromatic type concepts. And so I feel like learning that stuff and not really knowing what was going on, it kind of like allowed me to just develop faster as a player, like just purely like technique wise. And then afterwards I like learned the theory of it at like music school and stuff like that, and then it was like, oh, now I know what this is, now I know what I'm doing. And so it kind of like I could already play it, and then I could just apply the knowledge to what I was already doing. So yeah, not saying that's like the correct way, but that's how I did it. So yeah.
That's a great way, and I think it worked for you clearly, which is awesome. I think that kind of like what you said is like if they both kind of went together, that would be cool. Like to me, music theory is simultaneously a bunch of bullshit, and also to me, music theory is just a way to put names to the sounds that you're trying to create.
Yes,
Right? We don't
exactly.
have most of us don't need to go down some crazy rabbit hole because like you just said, a lot of the greatest music that we love is like major pentatonic, minor pentatonic, some Mixolydian, some Dorian, and
Yeah.
that's about
Yep.
it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
And it's the
Yep.
best stuff you've ever heard, and like everyone loves it, and I know I do. So like, I think one cool thing would be if you had like you like learn some of those weird diminished things that happen in the Allman Brothers or the Grateful Dead or whatever, and and somebody's like, oh, that's that thing, and all of a sudden it has a name to you while
Mhm.
you were figuring it out, but not like, ooh, now I have to learn the half whole diminished scale across the entire guitar neck.
Yeah, so I guess yes, I would agree with that for sure. I guess where I like actually I know a couple people who are kind of like in that intermediate stage right now, and like they they're just completely just like their brains are just getting all twisted up with like trying to learn the theory side of it and playing it at the same time. It's like it all just kind of is. It's more confusing to them because they can't quite play it and they don't quite understand it at the same time. So like they're just getting all mixed up. I don't know. I just know a few people who are like it's just really really tripping them up. But I think what you said though, I think that is like that is a good approach where it's like you learn to play it, and then it's not like you necessarily have to like wait like, oh, in a year, once you know how to play all this stuff, then you can learn it. It's like learn it, you learn to play a concept, and then like you said, yeah, pretty much what you said, just put a name to it kind of immediately
Yeah,
after.
if you
I
just
think
have a name to
that's
it. Yeah.
yeah.
And it sounds like you didn't worry about it too much. You just played it when you were playing tunes, and it was like, hey, this is kind of cool. And then eventually figured out what to call it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I would just like because just from again, like, dude, I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now, the Allman Brothers Phil Maurice, like that was literally like my guitar bible, like that taught me how to improvise and solo, and like the like pretty much all of the solos they play on those, like especially the jam ones, like that where they go into it's mainly Dorian on that album, but it kind of like it doesn't show you like comprehensively like every place you can play Dorian on the whole neck, but like just learning those solos, it gives you a pretty good roadmap for like, you can do a lot with just this kind of sort of, paths that they took. So yeah, I just kind of like, yeah, I wasn't really concerned with learning the theory stuff at first. It was just like, I just wanted to just sound like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
which is so cool. Yeah. I was a little bit more nerdy, and so I went maybe too far down that other rabbit hole. So it's like taking me a long time to get back to like I always wanted to play with vibe and did, but I didn't have a lot of language for a long time, and I still feel like that's like my weakest link, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I feel you.
um, do you hear a note in your mind before you play it?
Do I literally hear it like ringing in my head before I play it? No, but I feel like I've developed my ear enough and my understanding of theory and intervals enough to where I know ahead of time what a certain interval is going to sound like against a certain chord. So I kind of use that to inform the melodies and lines and stuff that I create. So kind of yes and no.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you feel like it's kind of like more of a gesture? Like it's like this is a sound. It's almost like it's a shape, but not necessarily like a guitar shape. It's a sound shape.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that like if I play the sixth of the key that I'm in like over the four chord, that's gonna be that's gonna be the major third of the chord that's happening, and that just kind of has a certain character and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
how I'm looking at it.
that's very cool. Okay. You play mostly in standard tuning slide?
Yes, I do now. I first learned slide and played it for many years in open E, but I switched to standard tuning probably 5 or 6 years ago. That's all what I only play in now.
Yeah, that's all I've ever done on slide, and it's like, using like the major triads on DGB and then the minor
Right.
triads on. But you also have like an amazing like play behind the slide thing going on too, which I can't do
hmm
any of that. I gotta figure that mess out. What's your favorite way to visualize the fretboard?
Honestly, I would say just the basic framework of how I look at the fretboard is kind of the pentatonic positions. Like it all goes back to that, and then just using the knowledge of the different scales and modes, and my theory knowledge and intervals and stuff like that. It's all just kind of in my head. It's all just kind of expanded out from that. It's like adding different colors to that basic like sort of framework. So yeah, just the good old pentatonic shapes. I think are kind of my core like framework of how I visualize the fretboard.
That's amazing. So yeah, so like if you were in a major kind of tonality, you would see 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 as like the major pentatonics all around. And if
hmm
you're playing a Mixolydian, you would put a 4 and a flat 7 in there.
hmm
If you're playing a major, you put a regular seventh. Like that
Exactly.
kind of approach.
Yep.
Very
Yep.
cool.
That's yep. Absolutely.
What is the least expensive piece of gear you use?
I'd say. Well, I kind of just got this, so I don't know if this counts, but this little Black Star Fly amp. This is like because I live in an apartment and I can't exactly crank up my super reverb or my basement or anything in here. So yeah, that's probably in terms of like that I regularly use. Yeah, it's probably the cheapest piece of gear that I own or that I use.
Okay, what's the most expensive piece of gear that you use?
Well, I'm about to sell it, but it would be my red custom shop Les Paul. That would probably be my most expensive thing. But since I'm selling it, probably the next most expensive would be my Mulecaster made by Mule
Ooh,
Resophonic Guitars, which yeah, I think they're about say like 3,500 or something like that.
a
So I mean,
beauty. Yeah,
nothing too outrageous in the land of like expensive gear, but yeah, I think that would probably be my most expensive right now.
that's cool. But you got to play, was it Dwayne's Burst?
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it was his gold top. I got to play a
Oh, that's cool.
replica of his burst. But yeah, I got to play his actual gold top, and that's 1.25 million is what it sold for. So yeah, that was. I mean, I feel like I was thinking more about just the fact that like, holy shit, this was Dwayne's guitar, but that was in the back of my mind, like, god damn, I'm holding over $1 million in my hand right now. Like it was pretty nerve
That
wracking.
is
Like
insane.
like making
It's
sure like I
sold to the
didn't.
museum?
No, it's owned by a person, but he loans it to the museum for 6 months out of the year. So
Wow.
and yeah, and we the band I'm in, Smokestack, they invited us up there to do a gig, and they just happened to have the gold top. It was their time of the year to have the gold top, and so they didn't let us bring it outside to play it at the gig, which I completely understand. But yeah, like after or like before the show, that he took it out. Richard Brent, he's the director of the museum. He took it out for me and Jack, the other guitarist in the band, for us to just check out, and then the next morning I went back and got to plug it in and play it through. one of Greg Allman's amps. Actually, it was a one of those '90s custom Vibrolux amps. So nothing too crazy vintage, but still, man, that guitar, like, it just had such a just character to it. It's like it has like a sort of mellow sound, but like not like dark or muffled or anything. It's just got a really just kind of warm, like pleasant voice to it. But the pickups and all the electronics are not original on it. It's just the shell of it is the only thing that's original, and it has a surprisingly thin neck for a 57. Normally you would associate a 57 with like that huge baseball bat neck, but it was more of like a 59 style, maybe even a little skinnier than that. Like it was a pretty thin neck, and it hadn't been shaved down or anything. That's just how it was. So yeah, that was an
Wow.
incredible experience to get to play that thing. That was like, yeah, chill inducing for sure.
Just amazing. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
man.
So, what trick or theory had the most bang for the buck influence on your guitar playing?
Well, I would say, especially because I'm a slide player, getting really familiar with my scales and everything on individual strings. So learning the like kind of the half hold patterns and stuff for all the different scales and modes, and yeah, I think that just that in addition to the learning the modes, kind of like I talked about before, that helped me be able to visualize the fretboard a lot better on for playing slide especially, but just for all playing too.
Amazing. Yeah. I think Mick Goodrick talked about it in his book where there are a lot of really great guitar players in the world, but the best guitar players know how to play really well on a one string.
Really, really. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really important regardless of whether you're playing slide or not, because it almost can, in terms of melody, can almost make you think more like a pianist, because like I always recommend people learn the basic concepts of theory on piano first, because like just all the notes are just laid out in a row. So yeah, I think being able to just see things on individual strings kind of can just help you visualize things better on guitar for sure. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I always tell my students it's like we're playing six different pianos. You know,
yeah,
they're only
true.
22 keys, but they're like and
Yeah.
the craziest thing is like register wise, it's kind of like bloop and then bloop and then bloop. And then,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
exactly. You get these little slices, but for sure.
what aspect of practice do you think people overlook the most?
I have an answer. I feel like it's maybe too easy, but I'll just say ear training.
Cool. And for you, ear training means transcribing and learning how to take things from a record, from something you hear, and put it on the guitar.
It means that and being able to identify intervals and chords and different scales and and all of those types of things just by ear.
Nice. All right, last one. Is playing guitar at a high level more about talent or work ethic?
I was just thinking about this the other day. I think personally it's more about work ethic and yeah, just learning, whatever I guess whatever that means for you, just learning the right things that are going to get you to play the way you want to. I think we're all, certain people are just predisposed to pick things up a little easier, which I guess you could maybe that may be a way to define talent. But yeah, I think it's more about the work and what you're studying personally.
Awesome. Sick, man.
Cool.
Great.